Mike, are you queued up and ready? Otherwise, I can show what I've been working on. I have it ready, so it's up to you.
Yeah, I can do mine real quick. I think
Boom. Not real quick though. I want to see it. Like, you got to fill an hour.
Gotcha.
Dead air. Fill the dead air.
All right, so we'll talk very slowly here. Okay, can everyone see that?
Yep.
All right, ballin'. So Brian has just been on our case for so long to optimize our images, probably for years now.
It does seem like years.
it's just one of those things where I fundamentally don't want to, and it's not because I'm a bad person.
It is.
It's because I would really like to get to the state where you upload an image of the original size, and the website hangs on to it and just makes derivatives of it, like you get from the typical CMS, right? But to do that in a static site can be a little tricky, because what you end up having to do is you have to generate derivatives for all the different sizes at build time. And you have to do that regardless of whether anybody is ever going to call that file or not. So it can get quite expensive on your server, and it's just a lot of stuff to maintain. So there's a service called Imaginary. I keep saying it wrong, but it's called Imaginary. And I don't know a whole lot about it, but I do know that they have a Docker container, Docker image for it. And the purpose of it is to be a sort of function as a service where you pass your images to this server and you specify whether you want it resized or cropped or put a watermark on it. Just there's a ton of different options here. Compressed, opacity, and it will generate a derivative of your original file for you and serve it up for your users. So the idea is, let's say that we have this image. This is our original. This is the image that we would upload for our article. What we would then do is we could pass this over to our Imaginary service, which I have it running locally here. What we're going to say is, I want this image cropped. So we're going to hit the crop endpoint, and we're going to specify the URL. And this URL is a little weird just because of my development setup, but it's going to be URL equals p hack CMS sites ODL hack CMS. Oh, yeah. Hold on. URL. There we go. Okay, so it says we're missing height and width. So we're going to add a width to it of, let's say, 300. And all of a sudden, we have this new image that is not our original, and it's all cropped and weird. But it's a new image, so we could just keep hitting that over and over and over again, and it's going to keep serving that image up. Let's make this a little bit more realistic by setting a height, by saying width 300, height 300. There we go. That looks a little bit better. So again, here's our original, and that's our new derivative. Now we can get a little funky with this, where let's say that what we really want this image for is like a thin banner that goes across the top. So the banner would have some really odd dimensions, like 800 width by only 250 pixels high. So that's our new banner there, and that looks great. But then we might be creating like a little card icon like we have here on our ODL website, where it doesn't look very good in this position here, right? You can't see the person in this photo. So what we could do is could add another parameter that's called gravity east. And we'll set, before we do that, we got to set the height. So let's set these dimensions as like 300 wide or 200 wide by like 500 tall. And there we go. Now the person's in the background. If we set north, we'd get that, but we want this person in the background. So that's a super powerful service. So the question is, what does that have to do with web components? And I'm kind of still trying to figure that out. But my thinking is that instead of just having image tags, or in this case, what we did is we had a news card web component, and we were just setting the image of, we were having the user set the image property, and then we'd set that as the background of this little area here. Instead of doing that, what we could do is say, well, for this card, we want to grab the image, but then we're going to run that image through our imaginary service. And I'm going to set not resize, but I'm going to set crop to, and then we're going to say the width is going to be, let's say 400, and the height, that looks about 600. And yeah, let's set that. Let's see what we get.
Was there supposed to be an equal sign in there?
Yes, there was. Thank you very much.
Peer programming.
Yeah. Okay. So looks better. Like these all look good, but this one looks a little rough. We still would like to be able to specify the gravity of this. So if I manually go in here and add gravity equals east, then we get that person in the background. So I'm thinking that, you know, we could also set, in addition to these settings here, we could set, you know, gravity for this card, and the gravity could be dynamic. So we'll set gravity as string, say this gravity equals east by default, or maybe center by default.
I could use this on accent card.
Yes.
Yeah. Then the chore becomes, how do we ship assets that are not 100% tied to a, you know, made up endpoint? So like optionally tying in if this exists, which could be a good case for like a singleton paradigm.
Okay.
That we listen for, you know, like if this global class exists, then allow it to rewrite the image based on these settings. Otherwise, use the default one that's passed in or something.
Right. Correct. Yeah. So we could, in our hack CMS land, we wouldn't really be setting that information on the web component itself. This web component is dynamically created by hack CMS. So what it does is it takes a look at all of the site.json items. So if I search for Horizon report, what I could do is somewhere in the fields here, I could set maybe, I don't know, maybe some resize options, or maybe I could target the news card image settings. And so for I could specify an override for that gravity setting in here. And then in my news card, instead of looking for it on the property, what I could do is I could look for it in the store, which it doesn't look like I have it set up. So I'm not going to go into all that, but
no, but that's a pretty provocative idea.
Yeah, if you watch the demo that Chuck gave a couple weeks ago, he went into getting those settings from the store, which look a lot like store active item. So HackCMS gives you access to the active item. In that case, you'd be drilling down fields, news, images, gravity, something like that. So it's a really interesting service, and the cool thing is that it seems to have all the caching and everything figured out. They have some documentation on how to beef up the load balancing a little bit if you're serving a lot of different sites. But this could be a service that could be used by lots of different web properties simultaneously. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, Andrew, have you used any? I know you've done some stuff with image manipulation services before. Have you heard of that or anything in the neighborhood?
So that particular one is new. There's several different image processing libraries that are out there, particularly focused around a standard called IIIF, International Image Interchange Framework. You can find it at IIIF.io. There's several different, awesome, Rebecca. There's several different image servers that are available, but that one in particular is kind of interesting, and I hadn't seen it before because of its Docker first mentality. A lot of these are, so the IIIF standard is basically to create a RESTful API for both images in particular, as well as groups and collections, and I forget what the next level up is for image libraries, if you will, but it's for the idea of dealing with images and redistributing all of those. So I would highly recommend that you look at something along those lines. I was just putting a couple of pings out to folks in the IIIF community to ask if anybody had talked with this imaginary folk to see if they've had any interaction with them. Because quite honestly, a lot of the flags and whatnot are consistent with what you would find on the API for IIIF. IIIF is being really very heavily supported by libraries and museums on the notion that pretty much every one of them is trying to get their collections online and reusable by as many different people as possible. And so I would imagine IIIF will continue to grow in usage. Library of Congress, Smithsonian, the adoption is pretty large. The Getty as another example. And it's doing exactly what you're talking about, Mike. as far as dynamic regeneration of that image. It's actually what we use for the Pennsylvania newspaper archive as well.
So I just sent a link that Mike pulled up to the 3D Smithsonian project, and it actually uses both web components and IIIF, which is super neat. And a lot of what they're doing here is really, really cool. They launched it a couple weeks back, probably about 2 weeks after we launched our first web component on National Archives. We did it first. They did it better.
Not a big deal.
I'll admit it. It's fine. But no, they legitimately did a really good job here, and we are working with. So Library of Congress actually uses some of their 3D modeling stuff as well. That's utilizing web components, and is also using web components on some of their stuff they've recently launched also. So this is a fun fact. But they've gone to, just to echo what the wonderful person who was just speaking was talking
Andrew.
about. Thank you. Andrew was talking about, yeah, it's really, really big in the museum world, and especially in a lot of collections and public spaces. And then we actually released a policy stating that everybody who's digitizing stuff needs to start incorporating IIIF as it becomes available. So like that's in written word. It's kind of cool. So that's all I got.
Potter, have you heard of how they built this Voyage Explorer thing? I mean, I know that we played around with, what was that, 3.js?
D3.
D3.
Yeah,
Wait, was that D3?
3JS.
3JS. Okay.
D3 is built off 3. Yeah, I don't know. Justin Fignani might be able to tell us. I think this is built off Model Viewer, the Google web component that does 3D modeling.
It might be, but the two people who actually developed this for the Smithsonian, I can probably get them to join next week if that's helpful.
Yeah, that would be really good.
Okay, yeah.
That'd be fantastic.
We've been working on a collaboration project, so I've been talking to them quite a bit. So yeah, I can try to see if they're available. The developer is actually in Michigan. He's getting ready to move to DC, although he might not be now with everything going on, but yeah.
That's dope.
Yeah.
They might have actually built this themselves, because
yeah, I don't see Model Viewer in there.
Yeah, they have
and they've got these FF tags everywhere.
Yeah, and SV Scene View. Yeah,
it's interesting.
Awesome.
So the
with
T-Rex one is
IIIF or the imaginary stuff, is there a way to like manipulate or stylize the images, like as it's being manipulated and served to the user?
So after talking to the Smithsonian guys, and this is what they told me, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, I think that the Justin fellow on Twitter also confirmed, there is no way to incorporate 3D and IIIF yet together. And so they've done it on their flat images and then their 2D renderings of the 3D images, but not on the actual 3D models like that you're seeing in the background over here itself.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's going to depend upon your image server is what it comes down to.
Yeah, Tom, was your question more like, did you mean, could you take an image and then say, make it black and white?
Yeah, so like Mike was just showing us like resizing the original image, but like either doing a black and white filter, or like let's say your brand has like a light blue, like 38% opacity on like a blue kind of filter on top of the image or something like that.
Right.
Can you like give it like a base image and then also tell it like add these specific either styling filters or augment or change the image in like this specific way, and then render that out to like a website or something like that?
The properties Mike was hovering over that I know he's typing it now would appear that is the case. It also has watermark in there. I thought it was BW or something.
Yeah, I think the color property was for the watermark specifically. So you might have to define.
Yeah.
It's an RGB value there. Mike.
Oh, color
okay.
space.
There's black
there
and
we go.
white.
Nice.
Ah. And then, does anyone know an RGB value off the top of their head?
Obviously, 52, 6, 19. I mean,
Sick. That's totally sepia.
who doesn't know that though? I mean, geez, what a question to ask. Nikki, because I like trying to come up with ideas that like become like a mind virus for you, so that you don't work on the studio. What do you?
You've been doing this all day.
I know it's just my
Collins is
distraction
gonna
game.
kick your ass.
Again, like all we have to do is bleep Nikki on all of these, Tom. That's all.
I have to give Tom something to bleep. At least I got some of the bigger things out of the way this morning.
It's true.
Dealing with
But-
healthcare bullshit.
but
Okay, so what mind virus are you going to infect me with this time?
So I have toyed with the idea of having this thing that is a site you go to that you fill out the fields and it actually writes hack schema for you.
Mhm.
In a similar vein, what if there was something that basically interfaced with the
So I was just going
Imaginary
to ask
API?
this shit about this. Like, yeah, were we looking for writing a component that's an interface that helps manipulate that?
Oh, like you mean like how they did with like Xcode and making things super simple to write apps? Because or are we on two different pages? Because I was actually
No.
thinking about the idea of like helping like a user interface that helps people create their own web components without actually them necessarily needing to write the code. No,
That
just
would be cool
Yeah.
too.
me.
Yeah, something along those lines, like basically adding an interface on top of that with sliders for these things and checkboxes, and so that
Yeah.
you could be adjusting that in real time as you adjust the little interface elements.
So if
But
we
yeah.
had a singleton, like if we had a singleton that was like the imaginary
Mhm.
imaginary service hyphen service element, and then the way things would implement that is they would do some global function check to see if it exists. If it does, then they would have to fire some callback. But what you could make a UI piece for is actually structuring what the data that goes into that callback should look like. So you could checkbox, like Tom is going to want to go and hit a checkbox that says make this sepia. That would be fantastic. I mean, I don't want to have to remember what that code is either.
I'm trying really hard not to swear
But
right
you were
now.
doing such a good job
You're
of remembering
such
the
a
code.
good job. So good. You're doing so good. Anyway,
Okay.
that seems.
Got-
I mean,
Maybe got
that's
that out
just-
of my system, but I'm going to sit on my hands too, because why do you have to divert me or like make me feel like there aren't
it's
enough
such a cool
hours in the day?
idea. It's just such a cool idea. I think it would be beneficial to society to do that. To work on cool ideas,
Mike, with the imagery or imaginary thing you were showing, is there a way to like layer images? For example, like if I wanted 3 layers, like like the base photo, a red layer that's slightly offset and a blue layer that's slightly offset, is that too complicated for?
That I don't know. That might be in that's just the watermark.
Yeah, that could be a watermark. Well, so what you could do in Drupal land with Image Magic or whatever their library was, is you would start doing derivatives of derivatives. So you would have, you might do one that is, so if you considered the red to be the base layer and then watermarked it with the blue and then used that whole URL as the input for the next one that then watermarked the green or something.
Yeah.
So you could chain them together. I'm, again, assuming that's possible because you could do that in much, much technically inferior services of the past. Those are a really nice way of talking about Drupal Image Magic. All right, does anybody have any other questions about imaginary or manipulation services of this kind? Going once, going twice. All right, now we're on to D3. So